then they sold to TPG, and then we've got IFC invested with us now. Broadly, what we mean is we do a good mix of organic and inorganic growth, and we have been continually doing that in the past, and we want to continue to do that in the future. We will be able to do that well. And coming to the investors, we have know what investors mean. We have been with investors all along, and we also know our responsibility to the investors. Because of the partnership with all our marquee investors, we have also been able to implement good quality of governance, good things of planning ahead of time. Our budgets are in place, and there's a lot of work that we do. Broadly looking at our strategy, if you look at it, we break it into two products when it comes immediate things are we're looking at our visibility and product reach as we grow forward and improving our procurement and processing capabilities. We have a little bit of processing capabilities still left with us because, as we said, we built a new amount of the plants recently. So we have a time for us to be able to build out those volumes there. We, as you can see, our procurement, we are concentrating a lot in making it 100% directly farmer oriented, improving in terms of time of collection to chilling, and trying to improve quality and also get more cost in our system. At marketing, as you can see, we are undertaking more presence in trying to get engaging with retailers to be available in more of the modern trade. And also we are aware that we also have to work more actively towards online and other areas of distribution. We're working at it constantly and trying to improve it. We also have another strategy of trying to put up our own retail parlors. We have around 371 of them operational, which are company owned and franchisee operated. We will concentrate more on those as we go forward. And those are the brief things of what we are going to do, Greenfield, what we have within us. And also we will be looking at, we'll pursue both in organic and inorganic. Organic is what we have been doing, and that contributes to our growth, and we'll continue to do that. We have been successful in our previous inorganic acquisitions, and we'll be concentrating also on how to get more inorganic acquisitions to grow forward. We are very conscious. We will not acquire for the sake of acquisitions, but unless they give some return for us where we understand the value and how we can improve it and make better returns for the companies when we will be acquiring them. We work hard at our acquisitions. We are pick and choose and try to get them. We will definitely get them and continue to go forward. We will also be increasing, hopefully, our value-added product profile. Like we will push for our product profile, but India, sometimes things happen very quickly and change sometimes rapid. We hope that few more products will come into this rapid category of growth. We think after COVID, there will be more push towards people looking at more healthier food options like paneers to the lassis or the buttermilks as an option. And if that comes in, well, we are well geared up to move rapidly and take up even the market, whatever available that is there. What we mean by R&D in the dairy farming activity, we are also aware of the back-end requirements that we have to do. Like we said, we have now gone GPRS enabled. And as we go forward, I think we will also metamorphose that Indian dairy will one day move away from the backyard to the dairy farming becoming major income. We are aware of that. We keep constantly looking at it and trying to help our farmers and see whether we can help them in any which way we can. And that's the part we do in the back end also. So these are the broad pictures. We will continue to do our organic growth going forward and a mix of inorganic acquisitions. We will look at them closely and be going forward with that. With that, basically that is our strategy for the ways to go forward for our growth. We have been doing a 15% CAGR growth. There's nothing that can stop us, at least in the near future, of continuing with that growth rates as we see as value terms. I think we'll also give a quick peer comparison for you guys to look at where we stand. Anjan, you can take the peer comparison through.
Sure, sir. So this is a peer comparison vis-a-vis what we consider as our immediate competitors or the other agri businesses. So this is majorly we are in competition with Heritage or Hatsun. So we're coming to the revenue CAGR from FY 2000 financial year 2017 to financial year 2020. Dodla Dairy grew at a CAGR of 14.1%, so which is highest in the dairy industry in the southern sector. And EBITDA margin for Dodla has been 6.6% in financial year 2020, but it has been fixed. If you see in the December 2020 numbers, so it has been, we are almost in par with Hatsun. And coming to return on capital employed, Dodla Dairy being the highest, so on the efficient use of capital, so by putting on plants and efficient use of this. And coming to gross asset turnover, Dodla Dairy Limited has a mix of smaller plants versus and bigger plants where we are able to use our plants and network efficiently. That's why you see the gross asset turnover is almost double than the other dairy companies in the dairy sector. Coming to the contribution from VAP, so we are also growing. We have grown from 15% to 27% in the last few years, and we are in line with where our peers are. Coming to working capital cycle, so how efficiently we are using the working capital, as I have explained earlier. So we are one of the best in the industry with 11 days net working capital. So this is where we consider ourselves that we always use the working capital efficiently and grew in the sector. Thank you very much.
So with that, I think we can leave it open for questions and take it from there.
Thank you so much, sir.
Nikhil.
Thank you so much, sir. We'll now open the floor for the Q&A session. While we have already received some questions and will be taking those first, a gentle reminder to all to kindly type your respective questions in the Q&A panel available. And we'll try our best to get all of these questions answered. Coming to the first question, how do you see yourself competing with other large private players of the South and also with India's largest cooperative dairy?
Come again, sir. I didn't get the question.
How do you see yourself competing with the other large private players, especially of the South, and also with India's largest cooperative dairy?
Sir, we are the youngest in the dairy. I mean, if you look at our peers, whomever we are comparing to as the largest private dairy being there, and even Amul being the largest cooperative who's come in as the largest, we are the youngest, and we have been growing consistently for the last 20 years. And that is because of our emphasis on what we do, very good things in terms of quality of the product, which brings us good market share, because consumers are end of the day in a food product. Word of mouth makes a lot of difference. And we have been able to prove that, and we have been doing it consistently. We have a very strong team of people with us who work in terms of the work ethic, with the process and the procedures that we follow. And that is one of the major reasons, in my view, that we do. Every business has competitors, and that is where we also differentiate ourselves. We are very constantly innovating and improving. If you look at right from the way we explained our procurement, where we have been constantly growing and innovating, not only in the size, but also the way we operate, going to the farmers directly. I think we are best in class with our competitors in those areas where we do. Yes, we do have maybe we are a little back-footed on maybe the brand or the marketing, and that's where we'll be rectifying it, and we'll be going forward, and we'll continue to grow stronger and as we go forward. So like any business, we do have enough of opportunity. There are competitors in the business, but if we do it the right way and work hard for it, we will definitely be able to do it, and that's what we've been doing, and that's what we'll continue to do.
Thank you. So there are a couple of questions on the nine-month margin expansion. So I'll just club them together. What led to the sharp margin expansion in 9 months of FY21? Are these cost optimizational, structural, or temporary?
Yeah. So I'll take it two ways, sir. First, I'll explain the whole rationale, and I think specific Sanjan can give you in terms of the watt liter price or whichever it is. The basic rationale between what happened was, for the year 20, when we were looking forward, our markets were starting to expand more rapidly, and procurement was starting to not grow that rapidly. So there was a gap where we had to buy milk from further distances and get in, and raw material milk prices were an all-time high. But when the raw material prices started going to an all-time high, we in March, between the year starting from the last quarter of February, that is 19 December to March of 20, began increasing our selling prices. We did our increase in selling prices, keeping into consideration the high procurement prices that we were anticipating, and then hoping that our margins will, we will maintaining a margin that we will want to maintain those low double-digit margins, is where with what reason we increased our selling price. Post-COVID, the price of milk procurement, rather than also increasing, crashed because there was a huge glut in the market. Therefore, our margins definitely expanded a lot more than what we anticipated. We think that this COVID numbers that are there will continue to be there, because right now there is a glut in the market, but the volumes are a bit muted because of no B2B sales or consumption. There's a lot of milk in the market, milk prices are low, but we've already taken a price increase with the anticipation of milk prices becoming higher. And even if milk prices go back, we will still maintain our high double digit, not high, I mean double digit profit margin numbers. So the reason mainly is because of the price increase that we have taken in the last quarter of 20. So that is what drove our margins up. And yes, added to that, COVID has made it expand more, but it will in the futures it will come down to the double digit numbers.
Thank you. So the last two dairy IPOs didn't do well. In light of that, what are you doing differently? And how do you justify your pricing at a PE higher than the Sensex and Nifty?
So the PE of Sensex and Nifty, I'll leave it to the bankers to explain. They know more about what the valuation, how we have arrived at it, sir. But compared to the dairies, if you notice, sir, most of us in the southern dairy part, our procurement and B2C has been our strongest strength. So the successful dairies have been the ones who have a strong focus on B2C products. And what we call as, when we look at our products, where we say 63% milk and 27% value added, our value added products we're talking of is curd. Our value added products that we're talking of is ghee, buttermilk, lassi, those kind of value added products, which have a reasonably large margin. And also that ability to have a fully integrated operation of procurement to sale has been the reason why we have been doing better consistently and growing with our own money. And when you come from it from an investor point of view, as I told you before, we have a different view. We have lived with all our investors. We understand the value of investors and the strength that the investors get to us, whether be it private or even in the public. And that fuel that we need to continue to grow is what we're looking at, sir. So I do not want to know, I don't know what happened with others, but at least as far as we are concerned, we have been doing well for our investors earlier. We will continue to do the same as we go forward, and we understand our responsibility towards investors. And to look at it, valuation, I'll leave it to the bankers.
Yeah. On the valuation, I would address that question. Sir, the observation that the IPO is being valued at a multiple which is more expensive than that of Sensex or Nifty is not correct. Right now, as we see, Sensex is trading at a trailing 12-month PE of almost 31 times. While FY21 financials have not been disclosed in the RHP that you see, even if you see it on the 9-month number, and even if I do not annualize it, the multiple at which the company is going to come, even on that 9-month number, is going to be less than 21. So clearly, it is not a comparable number. What we can tell you about the valuation is that we marketed this story to a large number of institutional investors. Those investors showcase very strong interest to participate at these valuations. There are certain other transactions which have, which are ongoing, and over the next few days, you might hear those announcements. Clearly indicating that large institutions have placed strong faith in the company at the valuation at which we are coming. Again, we don't want to compare ourselves with where the peers are trading, because the peers trade at disparate multiples, ranging from no multiple at all, given that there are no earnings, to a multiple which is as steep as 125 times PE multiple on a trailing basis. We believe that this IPO is fairly valued, and when you see the anchor book, you would get a fair sense of the reflection of the investor interest that is there.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
just to add to Vivek's points, I think we just want to say that whatever the public data is available, the comparison is not done to the Sensex, is done to the industry basically. And if you look at the FY20, which is the full year operating numbers that we have, you find that the PE at the higher end is 47, which is given in our ad as well, and in comparison to the industry, which is 68. So it is much lower than even the industry average. As Vivek said, the industry itself, the players have been much lower and have gone as high as 125, etc. But we are talking about industry average, and we are much lower than that. So that shows that, yeah, there is a headroom, and we want to make the pricing attractive. Just to confirm that, as the management has said, they have had a philosophy of rewarding the shareholders. So I think we have been there with the same philosophy. That is how the shares have been priced, so that it is attractively priced for the shareholders. And we continue to believe in the same philosophy and going forward as well. So that's the basis of the pricing.
Thank you. Sir, what is the competitive edge that you enjoy vis-a-vis your competition?
Sir, I would very quickly, like I was saying earlier, I think we have done a lot of work in terms of, let's say, our procurement. Like I said, we are best in class of this direct to farmer approach. compared to our competitors. We have done very well at that end. We have done very well on our plant ends that, as we said, we have upgraded and constantly improved our plants where we have all the state-of-the-art automated plants which improve again consumer quality and how we deliver to the consumers. If you look at our processes and systems, we are the earliest ones to adapt to the best in systems. Today, we are on a SAP platform. We have a lot of the BI tools that we use to improve our profitability, and we keep going forward with that. Yes, we are slightly weak on the brand front, but we do that consciously because we know that just a brand without having enough of the pull, and that is where we are now moving forward to. We are getting a lot more placement done in our organized retail, direct to home, and we have also started our activity on brand building. So in that order, sir, we're very good at our back-end operations, our plant, our processing, our systems and processes. We're very good at sales and distribution, and now we are moving forward into the larger game of the brand play also. And that is how we will be doing. And we have a very strong team with us, which is the basic core strength that keeps the operation of the company going and building it forward.
Great. So why is the EBITDA growth less than the revenue growth?
In terms of, sir, I mean, as a percentage or?
Yeah, you could probably throw some light on that as a percentage is possible.
Sir, what we look at it is that, okay, the growth I'm saying, if you're saying it was 11% in terms of EBITDA growth versus the revenue growth, which is at 15%, is what I think there's a question that would have been asked.
Yes, sir.
See, so predominantly what happens, sir, I don't know how to answer this in a manner, maybe, but I will give it to you in my way that we look at it more from that absolute number. So the way I look at it is, if I'm doing 10 liters of milk with 1 rupee profit and I'm making 10 rupees, if I'm doing 20 liters of milk and I'm making 50 paisa profit, I still make the 10 rupees as a margin. In the industry, sometimes because of the supply to sales kind of a region, we look at more of our absolute numbers of growth that we keep looking and try to maintain that. The value addition coming as 15% growth is sometimes also driven by inflation that we see growing sometimes. And that is where I think it is, the difference that we maintain. So we have an 8 to 9% or 10% volume and 15% by value. And I think profitability, we keep growing at that 11% of EBITDA growth. So that is where we are. I think, Anjan, if you have a better explanation, I don't know how to explain this. So
to put it in a word, so when we have a higher demand, when the revenue increases, we build up more volume. When the volume increases, what happens is the supply in the market goes, there is a huge demand for the supply. So where the prices for the raw material will go up, milk procurement prices will go up. So that is what will bring down that. So what Sunil sir is explaining is how we look at it is, so even when there is an increase in volume, so we try to maintain our absolute EBITDA level and will not see into the percentage level. So that's where as a company, we look at absolute how much EBITDA in absolute terms we are making, whether I'm increasing it or not. So that's why we'll see it. So that's why you see, if I increase my volume, the EBITDA might go down because the procurement I'm procuring at a higher price. But my absolute, there will be absolute growth.
Number will be higher.
Yeah.
Thank you. So could you elaborate on the thought process of expanding in Africa? And is there any plan to further expand in the international markets?
Sir, no, we will not be expanding in Africa. Sir, we are very aware it's a very profitable business in Africa, but we are also very cautious about country risk and other issues that come associated with Africa. So we will continue to grow in Africa with what we have. We have a plant there of 1 lakh liter or 1.5 lakh liter capacity. We are doing around 45,000 now. We did reach a 70,000 liter volume at one stage. So we will utilize our capacity to the maximum extent, concentrate for the moment in Uganda and Kenya, and build it more judiciously, because there are a lot of risk elements of country risk and other elements that come in there. And therefore, we will rather grow with a very measured activity in that area of operation as we're growing now in Africa. If we do see any spectacular opportunities that come anywhere else, which is nothing in the horizon right now, we will definitely look at them, sir. But right now, no. We will continue to keep Africa growing at a very muted pace. We will look at only a co-packing opportunity in Kenya rather than even investing in capital, and then try to do a balance of both and continue to grow it at a steady state there, sir. Today, for numbers' sake, it contributes 7% of our volume. And I don't think we'll try to take it as a rapid increase, maybe up to max of 10.
Thank you. So is there any seasonality in your quarterly revenues?
Yes, sir, we do have seasonality. The dairy industry is such that in the summer months of the first quarter of April, May, June, and July, August, September, depending on the monsoons, are the seasons where we have higher sale and lower procurement. And in the rest of the year, predominantly as the same manner, we will have a little lower of the sales and higher volume of production. Sir. I will take it to you as production. It happens is that the animals, when there is more feed in terms of rain, grass to eat on, animals eat and produce more milk, and they're also into their fresh stage of calving and lactation. There will be a higher volume of production of milk. And when the lactation cycle comes to an end, they start coming down. And that is why there is this little cyclicality in terms of the milk volume. And markets work in the other opposite. Come summer, there is more of consumption in terms of buttermilk, curd, lassis, milk, ice creams, and all the other products. Therefore, the summer volumes go up. When it comes to rain, people say that if it is cold, I won't eat an ice cream or I shouldn't use certain dairy products. It is changing now because as we have spread across multiple states, the seasonalities are changing and also the consumer pattern is changing. The people are no longer sticking to the old school of I won't use certain products during winter, and it's normalizing as we go forward. So earlier, we used to have almost a 40-50% variation between procurement and sale. And now BVK can correct me, and now I think we have come down to only 20-25%.
Thank you, sir. Sir, you earlier spoke about the Africa market. What was the reason behind expanding in Uganda and Kenya?
The margins, sir, they're almost 3 times the margins of India that we have. And that is the reason it's the same business that we do here. We procure, process, and distribute as we are doing here, sir. Spectacular margins because of high capital cost there, lack of knowledge there, and multiple other reasons. And that is where we can, I can easily expand to a couple of lakhs, but the associated country risks are high when we become too big there. Too much of visibility is not advisable there. So therefore, we are keeping it muted, sir. And growth opportunities are plenty, but we will take it in a slow fashion.
Thanks. Sir, could you also tell us about the regional market share in Telangana and AP that you have? Also, if you could tell us something more about the parlor strategy.
I think I'll just give the market share and BVK will talk about the parlor strategy. I'll give all the areas where we are doing. I think in Karnataka, among the organized sector, private, we would be around 9% of market share. And I think among the private sector, we'll be leading there in Karnataka. In Tamil Nadu, we'll be around 4%. In Andhra Pradesh, we are 11%. We should also be one of the leading guys in Andhra Pradesh also in terms of the private sector and market share there. In Telangana, we are at 3%. And overall markets that we operate will be around 7 or 8%. And BVK, sir, can you talk about the retail strategy that we're looking with outlets, sir?
Yeah. See, so far now we have 370 parlors, our own dairy outlets. And now we are looking, towards exclusivity. And in coming days, we are going to see that the number we are going to take it up to 500, 600 in coming days. So it is company owned and franchisee operated dairy outlets.
Thank you so much. So we see that the 9-month FY21 had a revenue dip, but the net profit plus margins increased. Are the margins sustainable or was that just a one-off? Also, if possible, could you please give some more color on the 9-month FY21 on the complete FY21 numbers, if possible?
FY21, I think we can only talk about the completed numbers because I think there's a restriction on disclosure of numbers. I think the bankers have to help me here. I'm not supposed to disclose the numbers of March, audited numbers. We can talk about the 9-month numbers, but we can show you that it is on the same state of trajectory of growth and we'll give you the 9-month numbers that are there. Like we said earlier, yes, the profitability that moved up substantially is also a COVID phenomena because like we said, we were preparing for a higher price of procurement and margin, and that's why our margins went up. But the selling price that we have taken even post-COVID when things normalize, our profit margins will definitely move up into the double digit from the single digit that we were doing earlier. As a combined cause of saying improvement in procurement, product mix changing, and the price increase that we have taken. So as a combination of all these, we will continue to maintain that double-digit profit numbers. And yes, current year we will maintain the same profit numbers as last year of what 21 we are doing because that's how the trajectory going forward seems to be looking at. And we cannot give you clear number things because also the COVID is still fluid. Whether is there a third wave, how far is the second wave lockdown going to go? But the first 6 months, as I keep saying, are always our peak selling months, which we will think we've already lost out in terms of having the summer months higher sales. So I think the revenues will be muted, but profitability will be on track.
Thank you. Sir, could you throw some color on the retail franchisee-based strategy that you have?
DRPs is what we call them, so Dodla retail parlors that we call. So what we do is we are now trying to create a retail parlor in areas where whenever we find a difficult penetration, and surrounding the retail parlor area, our sales teams go operate and work and try to get the market and give it to the individual who's operating there as a franchisee. These parlors are exclusive Dodla parlors. They hold the whole range of Dodla products. And as we go forward in the future, these will also be a brick and mortar for the online delivery systems to work. If we say if Tanzo wants to pick up, we can then link it to this retail parlors where online delivery also can happen. So we are continuously going to work there to continue to build this network of operating franchisees who will be taking care of the macro level of distribution at the local level. The company will help establish it. The company will put in the marketing effort to get the volumes there and then give it to a franchisee to do the day-to-day operations.
Thank you. Sir, could you also throw some light on the breakup of cow and buffalo milk used by you?
BVK, sir.
So slowly now, earlier, we used to, when we started the dairy, it is 100% buffalo milk, but, of late, now we see our cow milk almost 90% and present buffalo milk is only 10%, sir. Is it okay?
Thank you. Sir, the next question is, how have you been able to improve your direct procurement from approximately 50% in FY18 to 95% in the 9 months of FY21? Has there been any...
Sorry, go ahead, sir.
Sorry. Also, has there been any specific state or geography where the direct procurement has increased?
Sir, I'll give the basic 85 and we'll take the details. I think VVK will give the details. What we mean by that 50% to 95, earlier at the village level, we used to say that that was an agent who was collecting and our milk payment would stop at that agent level and 50% we were handling directly with the farmers. So that is what we mean that 50% of what we were giving as agent has now moved 95% directly to farmers. It was always our own procurement at the village level, but it is only the shift that we have moved away from that local village level agent whom we were paying to moving to the farmers directly. So that is what the shift that has happened. And I think the shift, as we can say, BVK will tell you more in detail, but it's only the last remnants of the old areas of the Buffalo Belt where we have not been, the conversion is yet to happen. But the remaining areas we have converted. BVK, sir, for the direct...
Mostly in cow milk area, we have converted into 100%, where we are getting, lakh a liter of milk, buffalo milk area, because buffalo milk, quantity of milk is very less. There is, it is very difficult to convince the farmer to open the bank account because the amount size also is very small. So except that, so majority 90% of the milk we are collecting from cow milk area, 90% of the area now we have converted into in the bank account model and directly paying to the farmer account.
So that is what we call as a direct procurement. So that we have changed from 50% to 95%.
Thank you, sir. Sir, also, where do you see your share of value-added products settling in the long run? And would you like to remain in the existing states, or you would like to expand it into states as well?
So we will be expanding initially to start with the adjacent states. So that is, like we said, we still have gaps to fill in Tamil Nadu, all over the places. So we will continue to expand and fill all the gaps in our existing states and move to the other states, like we say, Maharashtra is an adjoining state for us. And then after these are filled, we'll continue to expand. So this expansion is a continuous ongoing process. We do it more cautiously and where we have strength. Continuous expansion always gives us the strength of logistics and the ability to manage better. So that's what we'll be doing.
Thank you. Sir, are you also, will you show some interest on supplying organic products as well?
I mean, we will do a small volume, sir. It's more like a product mix that we have where we can say farm fresh milk, what farm milk we have, we can always create that as a product and sell. But in the long run, if you look at it, as of now, the Indian dairy sector itself being mostly backyard farming, in theory is predominantly organic. We cannot get certification because of the vast scale and operation it is. But smallholder farming is what we act as consolidators for the milk. But that is what will be, but we will not call it organic, sir. Not organic, definitely. Only a small portion.
Okay, and are you planning to export to other countries as well?
Not in the near future, sir. We have a lot more demand to be catered to within the country itself.
Thanks. What is your share in the various micro markets that you operate in, and how does it compare to others?
So, micro markets, I would say that in the tier 2 cities of Andhra Pradesh, because it's a vast range we range from almost 50% market share in certain areas to, like I said, to coming down to 5% market share in certain areas, sir. So it's a vast range. If I look at it as the older markets of Nellore, Ongole, the coastal regions where we are, there we will almost be a 50% market share, sir. So that is where we come with the overall states where our market shares keep moving around.
Thank you. So could you also share your procurement price and your selling price in FY20 and 21?
Then can you give it we can give you for a year, sir, roughly as what our an average procurement price in liter and selling price in liter was.
That will be great, sir.
So the net selling price for financial year 2020 net realization was around 44.98 rupees. And the cost of goods sold was 32.98 rupees for financial year 2020. And financial year 2000 for the period of 9 months till December 20. So our selling price net realization was 48 rupees 79 paisa, and our procurement price was the cost of goods sold is 31 rupees 26 paisa at a consolidated level for the group.
Thank you, sir. So how are you managing the supply of milk during the winter season when supply is high compared to summer?
Basically, sir, we have our own powder capacities that we have a powder plant in Nellore and a powder plant in Tamil Nadu. Whenever the winter surpluses are there, that is converted to milk powder, and that is used to a certain extent in summers for us also.
Thanks. The next question is, you mentioned taken price increase in March 2020, which stayed during COVID. But the industry pricing is more or less governed by the market leader, and your pricing is also in a similar range. So material cost reducing to 68% of revenue in 9 months of FY21 from 77% in all the earlier years appears only a little temporary. Could you please clarify that?
Sir, pricing is no longer as a market leader, sir. Certain areas, if you look at it, the cooperatives will be lower than us by 3 to 4 rupees a liter of milk also. And we sell at a higher price of 3 to 4 rupees, sir. So that is no longer a market leader positionship and the price of milk that is there. Each person has their own pricing strategy, and depending on the market, we sell at a higher price and lower price. So that is the reason, like Anjana told you guys earlier, that the price increase of 48 rupees has happened, and from 44 to 48 from the previous year. So that is why the margin is, and like we said, the procurement price remained just maybe a buck lower than the previous year of 20, where we were anticipating it to go up by 2 or 3 rupees. But the overall spread per liter will continue to be maintained. Post-COVID is what I was telling earlier, sir.
Thank you. Also, why was the growth in value-added products lower at 13.4% than milk's 16.4% during FY18 to 20, which is the low margin product?
Sir, okay, the milk volume has grown more rapidly, sir. So as a percentage, the volume for our VAP showed a little lower, but the milk volume grew up more, sir. We did an acquisition of KC Dairy, and therefore we had a substantially larger milk volume growth, which showed the product in comparison to be muted.
Okay. And what is the overall sales mix across milk and individual value-added products?
I can just take you briefly, sir. 27% of value-added products, 22 to 23% comes from curd, and then 2-3% from ghee, and the rest of the products follow there. And the 67% comes from milk, sir. Sorry, 73%. Sorry, guys, 73% comes from milk.
Great. Thanks. At the risk of being a little repetitive, sir, despite the growth of 12% in the value-added products over FY16 to 20, the organic growth is 10% for the whole business. EBITDA margin during this period has been slightly moderated. So why is the benefit of the higher margin value-added products growing at a higher rate not visible in the EBITDA margin?
Sir, basically, as I said, the percentage of the margin to the turnover, like we said, we were earlier concentrating more on the absolute number growth, which we're trying to push it as we go forward. And I think one of the years in the middle, we took a little bit of dip where procurement was lower than our sales market. And that is why we had to build up our procurement more in a year. So to keep this track of maintaining both of them in synchronization, if sometimes one overlaps the other, that year we will see a dip. But as I said, now this year, we have taken a strong position in terms of moving our pricing forward. And that is why our margin improvement started to happen across all categories, not only on one category, but milk and value-added products.
Thank you. Sir, the company's presence seems only restricted to the southern part of the country. What's the plan to expand the business all over India? If you could please explain this in slightly more detail.
Sir, all over India is like we said, we are present in other 11 states like Gujarat, Rajasthan, Himachal and all that, where we are selling our ghee as our product there, sir. For majorly the perishable, we have categories of perishable, semi-perishable, and then long life products. Long life products, we are also moving it across pan-India, but that is a factor that is subject to cost of logistics and realization. Therefore, we take a very cautious call there. In the southern states where we are building, we go in the plan of where we procure locally, process locally, and distribute locally. So in certain ranges, that is why we have these 12 plants in India which are procuring, processing there, and distributing there. In the same manner is what we are going to continue to keep growing. We will immediately try to look at growing into the adjacent states of Maharashtra, followed by Tamil Nadu, where deep south Tamil Nadu, we don't have much of a presence. We will keep continuing to grow there. Telangana, we still have a lot of area to grow. And northern AP, when we look at Rajahmundry and above, there is Visakhapatnam, Srikakulam. These are the areas where we also have to grow. So these are the first areas that we will start growing into. We have already built out a plant in Rajahmundry to cater to a northern AP expansion. We have built out a plant in Hyderabad which can cater to the Telangana expansion that we need. And a northern Karnataka plant can also give us access into the bordering towns of Maharashtra. We will build our procurement in Maharashtra and go there. We have started a Tamil Nadu entry with KC Dairy acquisition, and we look at further acquisitions going down.
Thank you. Also, sir, is there a risk of volatility in procurement price and selling price due to the state governments?
The state governments do, sir. We have been fighting it all the time. 5-6 years ago, we have been fighting with Karnataka government, which has given the subsidy to the cooperative, which we have not. And we have been successfully paying slightly less there and selling at a premium in Karnataka and been able to manage the show. To give an example, sir, today when it comes to the 1 rupee, 2 rupees, a lot of people do not really bother about it. Because if you take from the market side, a consumer who is buying 1 liter of milk, and if he has a 1 rupee price differential of 30 rupees or 60 rupees, nobody really bothers about it as long as the quality, service time and delivery are good. People are willing to pay that premium. And the same way, if you look at the procurement at the backside, the price might be higher, but if the payments are getting delayed by 6 months or 7 months and payments are getting late, the farmer is not happy. He rather get his money upfront, because dairy is something which every 10 days they get their payment made and they depend on that money for their day-to-day requirements. It is, if they're getting it at, they're not sure of when the payment is being made. They're not very happy with that, and that is the reason why we are able to manage both.
Thank you. What is the capex done in FY20 and FY21?
Anjan, can you help me there, sir? FY20 we had a larger capex, sir, and little less capex in 21. Specific numbers, Anjan, can you tell us?
Yeah, just a moment, sir.
So basically, we completed our plant in Rajahmundry, sir, and we also upgraded our plant in Nellore. That was a major capex that we were doing. And otherwise, we keep majority. Now the chilling centers that we keep growing is where we do our chilling centers. So I think it was in the tune of, Anjan, can you go with the numbers, specifics?
Yes, sir. Just I'm technical issue, so I'm just opening the file. So it was 65 crores, sir, for FY20.
Yeah, 65 crores, sir.
Great. Thank you so much for that, sir. Sir, also, if you could throw some light on the technology that you're using to reduce costs of manufacturing compared to competition.
So not only as compared to competition, sir, we're doing it on our own. Like, for example, we have installed almost around 2 megawatts of solar power across all our plants where we can utilize it. If you look at our chilling centers, what we said, that GPRS enabled system, where we have eliminated the middlemen, is a large process. We use a bit of process automation, because when we're tackling with 1 lakh farmers, coming down to around 6,000 odd or close to 7,000 chilling centers to 90 chilling centers, we have to constantly keep viewing it to see what happened to discrepancy, if there's any changes that happen, if somebody is getting more or less, why is it happening? And that process automation has been a lot of work that we have put into. So similarly, when we look at the marketing side, our ability to keep track of the number of drops that is happening with the retail trade, why the drops are happening, how we are going forward, our own plants that we have automated in terms of bringing down our water consumption. So it's been a battle across all fronts and a continuous ongoing battle. So it's not one thing as such. So multiple things that we keep doing, and every 2-3 years we keep upgrading ourselves. For example, our processes were earlier on Microsoft Dynamics. From there we've moved into SAP. So it's that battle we continue to keep fighting. So.
Thank you, sir. Sir, how would you differentiate yourself in value-added products as compared to others? For example, in the case of paneer, the industry is completely cluttered because of competition, and other factors such as shelf life also affects these value-added products. So, with all of these factors, how can one get the margin? How can one get a margin growth in these products?
So that's why, sir, we are very careful when we told you about it that our larger product today is curd, and we have a lot of strength that all our plants, major plants, produce curd. And we're able to move it faster to the market because of that locally procured, local area manufacturing and distribution. So that where we have this shelf life issue comes with products like paneer, which have a 45 days of shelf life. But we have multiple production facilities where we move them into these respective markets. And that is the reason the strength of being in this regional area than being pan, of producing in one area and then moving it across a long area, is what we are. That's a strategy that we go forward. So we try to reduce that footprint. We produce wherever locally and distribute in the adjacent market. So that gives us a quick turnaround time. That's what we keep doing. For our perishable and semi-perishable, non-perishable products like UHT milk or flavored milk, which have long shelf life, that doesn't make a problem. There we are very cautious about logistic costs.
Thank you. Sir, are you planning to launch any new products soon? And are you also planning to enter the Kerala market?
Kerala market, no, sir. We will not be entering the Kerala market in the near future, sir. We have a lot of things to do in Tamil Nadu, Maharashtra, Telangana, and Andhra itself. So that is where we'll concentrate immediately, sir. Looking at other products, I mean, we had launched ice cream 2.5 years ago, but unfortunately, due to COVID, we've lost 2 years of good summer markets to build our ice cream. We'll be more concentrating on ice cream. But we always tweak with product variants. Like we said, 3 years ago compared to now, we're doing a lot more of paneer. Most of our plants have been geared up to do paneer. We moved away from glass flavored milk to PET flavored milk, which has got better feel and touch and longer shelf life of the products. So we'll be tweaking with a lot more of products. Like we said, lassi and paneer. If you look, let's say paneer, the fermented drinks like lassi or buttermilk, we are looking at multiple options in terms of pouch to cup to maybe a future of bottled milks. So I mean lassis. So the variants in the category will happen to subcategory, and that continuously will be happening, sir, as and when we look at market and market dynamics changing.
Great. So there are again a couple of questions regarding what is driving the volatility in EBITDA percentage from FY19 to 21, and are the FY21 margins sustainable for you?
Yes, sir. FY21 and FY22 margins will be in the same numbers, sir, because as I said earlier, because of COVID, the sales are muted and there is a procurement price which is lower, which is giving us. But that selling price, like what we explained earlier, being higher, even after COVID, we have considered the highest price of procurement, which was in FY20, and with the highest price of FY20 procurement, with the selling price that we have now, with the volumes also increasing, we will still maintain better margins. So we'll improve our margins to the double digits. That is moving away from the 6-7% to the 10-11%. 9-11%.
Thank you. Sir, how will you be able to monetize these retail parlors with just milk and a few value-added products considering the size of operations?
Sir, when we look at it as whatever we have been seeing with the operating parlors, we have a certain number in mind which makes these parlors viable. That because we are not looking at high street parlors, where we look at more of lower residential, the sizes are much smaller. So it fits well in a size of even a small volume of say 100 liters of milk being distributed with a bit of curd and a few products. These parlors are very viable. So it's more on picking the right real estate rather than going all over the place.
Thank you. Also, what is the rationale of doing such a complex business outside India, given that the domestic opportunity is also very large?
Sir, for us, we consider that as same as domestic, sir. Because for me, let's say if I have to reach to the northernmost operatings of India, of northeast or the Kashmir, to us reaching Africa, is one and the same in terms of time, and it's the same business. What we procure, process, and distribute. But the only differentiator is 3 times the margin of what we get here, and that's what drove us to go there and keep continuing to do that business.
And could you also share the breakup of revenues in terms of the contribution from milk vis-a-vis the percentage contribution from other products?
73 and 27, sir. 73% milk, 27% other products.
Great. Since the milk procurement prices are so high, what will the margin impact of that be on the company?
No, so this year the prices we are maintaining the same. So there's no impact for this year, sir, as we look forward, as we go forward.
Okay, thank you. Coming to the next question. Since you're talking about an interest in organic products, what precautions will you be taking, and what are your suggestions for farmers?
So farmers in India is, I mean, not only in dairy, but when you look at agriculture, there is this huge change that will be happening. That this is my personal view, sir, that Indian farming is going to change away from the old school of high labor intensive, where there was a cheap labor, and which in turn was, the farming sector was geared towards labor intensive. It is going to go into more of intense production, like we'll be following like the rest of the world. And that is where I think the farmers have to start getting more aware of it. We were earlier in a system of low input and a low output kind of farming, which will start to change, becoming high input, high production farming. If you look at our milk prices today, the Dairy India prices that we're paying in India are nowhere low, anywhere very low than compared to the international prices. I am not sure, but I'm sure we'll be on par with New Zealand or Australia in terms of even dollar terms to see what prices we are paying to their farmers and what our farmers are getting paid. It's only because of the productivity difference and lack of more of concentrated farming that our farmers are not realizing the benefits. So going forward, I think farming has to be treated as an industry. So it's not anything any different from an industry, and farmers must have a lot more in terms of knowledge, and that's how they will try to improve the productivity.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much for that. Could you also please comment on the usage of the funds raised through this IPO?
So fundamentally, the IPO funds, as they've disclosed, will be 32 crores will be used for repayment, and 6 and 7 crores for ongoing capital expansion, and the balance for general corporate purposes.
Thank you. Sir, there's a general notion that all private dairies will procure sub-marginal quality milk versus the cooperative procurement. Your thoughts on that?
We actually procure better quality, sir. We invest more in terms of our quality, and the testament is that the growing consumer base. If I don't procure good quality milk, sir, I cannot give a good quality product. See, in milk, procurement quality is almost 70% of the game. The plants, the improvement and the process further on will add only 30% more in terms of improvement. If we didn't have good quality procurement at the back end, the front end will never grow, sir. I mean, our testimony is not in what we say. It's every household that buys milk, whether private or cooperative. Every household knows what milk is. So we cannot grow with that, sir. So that is only a misnomer. We spend a lot more of time, energy, and effort in making sure that our quality is good, sir, and maintaining the cold chain and delivering good quality at the end of the day. Otherwise, we cannot be selling at a premium in the market.
Thank you, sir. In the interest of time, we'll be taking a last couple of questions. The next question is, what was the effect of the long lockdown on milk consumption in the year 2020?
So that way, we are very happy to say, not only with Dodla, but as a country as a whole, the milk industry has done a spectacular job. Right from day one on March 23rd last year, when lockdown was announced, milk was delivered on 24th, milk was procured, and the operations went on seamlessly. The government, the people working in the sector, everybody put in their effort. I mean, it was scary, the amount of fear that was in the system. But the truck drivers, to the village procurement agents, to the milk distributors, to everybody in the companies, everybody did their bit. And we are proud to say that we are as much frontline warriors as much as everybody else in delivering the essential product that was delivered to the society at large. Coming to the sales numbers, yes, there was a little bit of, as we said, that the 10-15% muting that happened, predominantly coming from no offtake in terms of things like ice cream, the value-added products, a bit of them did come down. And a few of the things like cafeterias and industrial operations not being there, those volumes were slightly affected. But the testament of the fact was we still did sell that, almost 90% of our revenues did come in and our volumes go and continue during the tough times, show that we are a very resilient industry. We did that earlier when there were cyclones and floods, and we have continued to do that in long periods of the pandemic also. So that way, as an industry, being in the essential commodity services, we have done a good job, sir, and we continue to do so.
Thank you so much, sir. We'll be taking the last question for this session today. So you have IFC and Elevar as investors, which are ESG and impact investors. So how is your work impact or ESG centric? If you could throw some light on that.
Sir, the dairy industry has a huge impact at the macro level. So like I was telling you, we look at our farmer community. If I'm talking of 1 lakh odd farmers, 1,10,000 farmers, whom we are paying on an every 10-day basis, we are literally, the industry as such is something which is one of the few unique ones at the farming community level, which provides them the day-to-day money requirement. They don't necessarily look at dairy as a profit and loss. For a household which has 2 or 3 animals, they are able to, even if I say getting 5 liters from each animal, 15 liters at a rate of whatever the 25-30 rupees that they're getting paid, is basically what causes the sustenance to keep going. As an industry, we also try to give a lot more of the inputs to them, make their life easier. Like if we're giving cattle feed at a price which we deduct from the milk, so that they don't have much of a capital employed in that. So that is one of the major impacts that happens on the ground at the farmer level. And at an employment generation level, we generate a tremendous amount of employment. So for a small company of, let's say, our size in terms of revenue that you look at it, we have on rolls 2,500. If you look at our contract staff of 2,500, our logistics would be anywhere at between the 2,000 to 3,000 people involved in logistics. The retail side of at least another 4,000 to 5,000 people involved. So that way we look at it, we have a very large impact on society at a very macro level of operations. And this is something which we are doing like daily business, 365 days of the year at the farmer end of picking it up. And at absolutely minimal capital. If you look at the retail trade of the sale, the guy does not have to do any capital. Majority of them, even some of them work from the pathways, footpaths who are coming and delivering milk to your house. It's like the Dabbawala system, right? Milk had been delivered to every household, money was collected and been able to pay. So that is with the amount of impact we have. And we are very careful to keep it calibrated. So it is not that we will go at any cost of either destroying either side. We have a responsibility to the farmer and we have the same responsibility to the consumer. So we strike that balance on pricing to operations to everything at a very even level. So the farmer has to be taken care of as well as the consumer.
Thank you so much, sir. I would now like to invite Mr. Ashwini Khare from ICICI Securities for the vote of thanks, please.
Thank you, Nikhil. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Reddy, for a very comprehensive presentation on the company and taking all the questions of our, investors. We are very grateful to you. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us today in this evening and sparing your time with us. I hope you found this question answer session informative and this was useful for you to take a decision on your investment in the company. We, on behalf of the BRLMs and the company, would like to thank each one of you. I mean, it was an overwhelming response. I saw the virtual connection of 315 people virtually logging onto this network. I mean, this was an overwhelming response, and we are very, very excited to bring this IPO, ISEC as a left lead and Axis as the co-BRLM for the issue. We are very happy to bring this IPO. We are also very happy to be associated with the company because we endorse the philosophy of the company of rewarding the shareholders. And we believe this IPO will be a great success given the kind of attractive pricing that we have offered to the investors. Just before I conclude, the important dates for you to remember, friends, is 16th of June is the date when the IPO happens, which is Wednesday. It closes on Friday, which is 18th of June. So 16 to 18, just keep a watch on that. The share price per share, the band that we have offered is 421 to 428. The trading lots are 35. So this is the details about your investment. We seek your support in making this issue a great success, and we thank you all for joining in today. And be safe with your families at home. Thank you so much. Thanks again.